The Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss, and I got with me Captain Tony Summers. The dude is a bass fishing legend here in Central Florida. He's also the owner and operator of MarineTech Systems. Tony, what's going on, buddy?
How's it going, brother? Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely.
Seriously, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Tony and I first met at a Bass Pro Shops photo shoot. He was on a nitro boat, and he was one of the pro anglers for that. They booked him because of how good of a fisherman he is. They booked me because of how handsome I am. That's why I'm on radio right now, right?
Some have our best features there, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But we hit it off really well and become good friends since then. And Tony and I also did an episode together. And Tony, a lot like me, also does fresh and saltwater charters. Dude stays busy. So let's talk first about where you're located and where you do your charters. And then we'll dive into our episode, and then we'll dive into MarineTech Systems. Because I am just fascinated with just the whole process of rigging boats. I think that's really fascinating. And if you're into rigging boats, this is going to be educational for you, because Tony is the man here in Central Florida when it comes to rigging boats. So where are you based out of, man? Where you do your fishing? Let's talk all
that. At the moment, with the recent move, I'm just east of the Kissimmee chain, not too far from Lake Dora. Over in Mount Dora area, so just north of Orlando, half hour or so, but still Central Florida area. So,
yeah, there's a lot of seaplanes on that.
That's where I'm at, but my shop is in Winter Garden, south end of Lake Apopka.
Okay.
So kind of in between Orlando, Claremont area. But yeah, that whole area, they call the seaplane capital of the U.S., which is quite a bit. And they're on Lake Dora. They built a whole dock and restaurant area.
Yeah.
Kind of landing area for all the planes.
I took my wife and kids up there not too long ago, back in the fall. First time I put a boat on that lake, and there was actually a tournament that day, and we caught some fish. My wife caught this giant alligator gar. My boys were going bananas. Like, what did Mama catch?
There's some monsters out there. Yeah, they've got them.
Been in some time fishing out there?
A little bit. Growing up, I grew up in Claremont, so I spent some time in Claremont chain and on the Harris chain quite a bit, just in that area. So I know it pretty well. Probably not as well as I'd like to, but I've definitely spent a lot of time on it. Neat fishery. Hard to see where it's at now, but it's still the Harris chain, just like some of our other places, and it still shows itself this time of year when they start spawning and pulling up shallow, and we get more opportunities to catch those bigger females that are there, bigger bags. So it's fun.
Are you seeing the bass already starting to school or to spawn?
Oh, certainly. So we've had a month, what it felt like, of cold between late December all the way through January. And then I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe late January, first week of February, we had that warm trend. Yeah. Kind of almost coincide with the full moon. So we had a big wave then. A few of the lakes I've been on this week and a little bit of last week, I'm seeing fry on the banks around the arrowheads and few of the normal areas where they're going to pull up and spawn. So you're already seeing fry, but at the same time we're catching males now that are peeing. So that's going to coincide with the next new moon, which is going to be the next wave. As long as the warm trend kind of happens in another 2 weeks, we're going to have another big wave then. So you still have some, kind of in between. Maybe this front we just had this week will back them off a little bit, but next week for sure, third week in February, they're going to start pulling up even heavier.
Absolutely. What is your favorite thing to throw at these fish? And now I will say, I like to leave any kind of breeding fish alone. Usually if I go and I'll pick one or two off, and it's like, okay, we've had some fun, we've caught a big one, let's let it go and let them do their thing. What's your favorite tactic of catching these bedding fish?
Probably either just a straight tail stickworm or a cross style bait, something that's got some flappers to it. And I'm using either two colors, straight white or something dark. So if the bed is super, super bright, I want the contrast. So I use something dark. Or if it's
Mm,
kind of darker and I can't see real well in the water, then I use something bright so I can
mm.
see and kind of locate the better or locate the bait better. And also when the fish eats it, you see that whiteness go away.
Yep.
Same way with the dark color.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah, I typically throw
So
like DOA makes a fluke style plastic 4-inch bait, usually throwing white, and it's really getting it into that bed and letting it sit and
hmm
moving it around. You want to keep it in that zone because as soon as you come off that bed, these fish don't feel threatened anymore. But when that
yeah,
bait is on that bed, it's going to annoy them, it's going to irritate them, and they're going to not eat you more than likely because they're hungry, but eat you
yeah,
because you're annoying them. You're in their space.
exactly.
You are a threat, and they're going to take the threat out.
Through some advice over the years, I've kind of actually increased the weight. So I throw two setups, like a Texas rig style,
Hmm.
whether pegged or unpegged, and also throw a short drop shot style with like a half ounce or even heavier weight. That way, when you get it in there, it makes it easier to keep it in that same spot, but also,
That's a good idea.
create a little movement or a vibration to it. So
Why you said pegged or unpegged? What has been,
as
have you
far
noticed,
as the bullet weight on the nose, pegged or
right,
unpegged. So
keeping
if
it
they're being
slide?
like real finicky to it, then I'll probably peg it more. But if
Okay,
if they're just kind of grabbing it and holding on to it, then I might not peg it. But
gotcha.
typically, I'm probably going to peg it because a lot of times you're going to be around vegetation and cover, and what can happen is you pitch in, but yet there's a couple strands of whatever type of vegetation you're around. The bait itself is going to catch that, and the weight is going to go down.
Hmm.
So you're going to create a lot of frustration in yourself trying to
Yeah.
get both pieces inside the heart of that bed.
But by
So
pegging it,
typically,
it gives more weight on the bait, allowing it to sink through those holes and
it
get through
just
that vegetation.
keeps it all as one piece. Yeah.
One
So
piece.
typically
That's
using a
very
bobber
smart.
stop or sticking a toothpick in the back of the weight, breaking it off, and sliding that bullet weight down to the nose of the bait.
Very smart. That's a great tip. If you are into
So
bass fishing, and Tony said that. He said if you're getting frustrated with your bait getting fouled up while your weight's going down, you're not going to catch a fish on that weight. They might hit it out of
no,
annoyance, right? But you're not
yeah,
going to do anything with that. Okay.
no,
That's a great tip. So using that peg to keep it all together as one unit, to control that bait, allowing that bait to punch through any kind of
yeah.
vegetation that might be around the bed. And then if you don't have any pegs, having a toothpick and popping in there and popping it off and
That's
breaking it.
that's the old school way. We used to carry around little medicine bottles with toothpicks in them, and
Yeah. Yeah. Very
uh,
cool. No, you don't just fish, the Kissimmee chain or Harris chain. If I'm not mistaken, I've seen you out on Tenor Rock.
I've never fished there, but
Oh,
I go all over.
what's the quarry you like to go to?
Oh, that's a private golf course lake, 600-acre
Oh,
lake
oh,
off
okay.
of
So now we won't talk about
yeah, yeah. That's a
that.
so I lucked into because I went to high school with someone that works with the course, and
Cool.
so I'm the members fishing guide for this high end
That's
place.
awesome,
Yeah, it's
dude.
God opened a cool door for that one. Yeah.
Heck
So
yeah.
still, I do fishing clinics out there for the members' kids, and try and make them happy in a sense, and but enjoy the opportunity and do my part to keep that door open.
Oh, well,
So it's nice. Yeah. But
I won't
throughout
pry
the
on
year,
that
like
one.
when
That's
I was
cool.
full time up until 20, when I was still full time, I was fishing Rodman north to Ocala, and
Rodman,
also
that's it.
Rodman.
Rodman
Yeah. So
Reservoir, not
I
Tenor
fish
Rock.
Rodman. Yeah, I fish Rodman quite a bit, so I know it real well. But then also, Rollins down in Okeechobee would call me, and I'd go
Mm.
do charters for them or do group trips, and so I was traveling coast to coast and north to south.
I'm a little embarrassed to actually admit this. Okay. I turned 40 back in December. That's not what I'm embarrassed about. In July. I've lived in the Central Florida. I've lived in Florida my entire life. When I moved out of my parents' house, okay, I bought a house half a mile away in the same neighborhood. Okay, I haven't gone far. I've lived here my whole life. I've only seen Lake Okeechobee one time, and that was back in July.
Oh, wow.
And I've never
Wow.
fished it. And I was on because if you're not familiar with it, and I had no idea until I saw it for the first time. There's like a berm around the lake.
Yeah.
And so when you're
Rim
driving
ditch.
on
Yeah.
the road, yeah, you can't see the lake. But I went over a
hmm
bridge and I was like, whoa, that is a massive, massive body of water, dude.
45 miles across, something like that, 45 to 48, north to south. Yeah.
Mm,
Dude, it's nuts when you first pull out. There's a ramp canal, like where the Kissimmee River comes out northwest corner, and you pull out and you can't see the other side. It's wild.
yeah,
It's like being at the coast with
yeah,
vegetation. It's
100%.
nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta fish it. Johan Alvarez,
Oh yeah.
another
Oh
good friend
yeah.
of ours, has invited me to fish with him down there. I've got to
He can
go
show
either
you
with
around.
you or with him. Love to get out there and catch a bruiser bass on that lake. It's just so historic, man. It's so, and I hear, and again, I've not been on the lake. I hear it's not very deep, and I hear because of that, it can get really, really rough.
It can get nasty quick. Sort of like I don't know if you've ever been on Lake George on the St. Johns River. It's similar to
Yes.
that,
Huh.
based off of how it's directed. You can get a lot of north to south wind,
Mm.
and you can get some rollers. I would not be surprised if there's been 8 footers because I've seen six. So I would not be
Wow.
surprised in some heavy storm like a hurricane. There's 8 footers plus, guarantee you.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah,
No thanks. And we have
yeah.
we got a minute left on this segment, but I was out on the river today on the Indian River, and we had a north front or a cold front come in last night, and it was blowing gusts in the 30s, and there was 2 to 3 foot
Oh,
rollers in the river today. I was the only guide out there. I was the only boat at the
you're
ramp.
about the only one I've seen you past 2 weeks braving it out.
Woo! Dude,
More
I gotta
power
feed
to
my
you.
kids, man. I gotta feed my
Yeah, I
kids,
hear you.
so we ain't saying no to trips. Been catching a
Yeah,
lot of fish and finding fish, but it's just getting to them. It's been so, so nasty, and I can't stand that wind. If the wind wouldn't stop blowing, man, if the wind would stop, it'd be so much more. You don't care if it's 40 degrees, it'd be more comfortable and we'd still be catching fish. Hey,
certainly.
we are quickly running out of time on this first segment. Thanks for listening to the Captain's Log Radio. We got more to come here on the Outdoor Radio Network. Hey, y'all hang tight.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss, and I am so stoked to have my dude, my bro, my friend, Captain Tony Summers with me today. We're talking
Hey,
fishing. We're talking a little bit of everything about the outdoors. Tony is big into fishing for bass. We actually did a bass fishing episode together, and a hurricane had just come through, and we got to the boat ramp. Oh man, Tony, I'm gonna tell on us. And there was a giant sign. By giant, I mean it was like a foot by a foot, and it said "Ramp closed, no fishing." And we
yeah.
pretended. I told one of the camera guys, "Go stand in front of that sign so we don't see it." We launched the boat, and off we went. And we were on West Lake Toho, if I'm not mistaken.
Westlake Toho. Yeah, yeah.
And we had a great
We
day.
switched lakes after that, but yeah, we started on Toho.
We did. We made a little move a little further south, and Tony showed me, on that lake, he showed up with these plastic worms, right? They were like giant.
7 inch. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm like, bro, what are you gonna do with that? And he's like, well, out here, man, there are needlefish, and these bass like to eat needlefish. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I'm telling you. And so he stuck on one of these giant plastic worms, with both of our rigs, and man, we started whacking some fish. And clearly, Tony had the home field advantage. He put some fish in the boat first, but I came in swinging after that, and we
that
had a
you
good
did. That
time.
you did. Yeah,
We
that
did
it
end up
was.
making. Go ahead.
No, just saying that you definitely came back and find fast. You started to figure it out pretty quick. It didn't take you long.
No.
It did not
And
take you long. Yeah.
I like throwing plastic worms, but I'm so used to just power fishing and especially out on the salt. Like some days I need to cover water until we find that where that school is sitting. Uh, so fishing slow can be really difficult for me and my ADD and wanting to just like work a bait. But I grew up throwing a purple worm, with a bullet weight. I love, feeling that fish grab onto that worm. It's just that tap, 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 and you're like, oh, there he is. And my dad's real aggressive with it. He'll throw that bail open and let out some line, flip the bail, get tight, and just giving the fish plenty of time. And meanwhile, I'm like, Pop, set the
You
hook.
got a whole procedure. Yeah.
Yeah, set the hook, man. Like, what are you doing? But we got that dialed in, and we made a move and fished a lake further south. And Tony, when that was my first time on that lake, and I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. Uh, I had never been there, and it felt like we transported to another state. There was no houses on this lake. There was nothing, no,
There,
anything
there's
commercial.
nothing but cattle south of
Yeah,
Kissimmee.
and it was absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. Do you care if we share the name of that lake?
No, no, not at all. Not at all.
Okay,
No,
so
we
we
shouldn't.
were
Yeah, because we started on Toho and I bombed. I had this whole game plan set up and I bombed it and we had to make a move and we went south to Cyprus.
well, we
Just
talked about going through the locks.
yeah.
That was on our game plan, and I was really stoked about that because I had never done that before.
Hmm.
Um, and the locks were shut down because of the high water
Oh,
from the
that's right.
hurricane.
Yeah,
So we ran down to Cyprus, and Cyprus is beautiful, dude. And
it
you took me
is.
to some areas where um, we had moving water, we had bass that were schooling. We switched up. We fished further south to some
And
areas that had
then
a
went
lot of
down the
vegetation.
Kissimmee River to Hatchinall, just
Yeah,
farther south. That's where you were turning them up on the top water.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
just it was an unbelievable fishery. If you're listening to this and you end up side, you want to go check this place out. I will say, be mindful of the bass boats. There are guys that are in a hurry on that lake and they don't care what you're doing. But it was an absolute beautiful, beautiful fishery. And since you and I have fished it, I have gone back and fished a couple of times with some friends just because it's such an escape down there, man.
It is. It is. It's definitely getting, and a little bit of old Florida again and kind of getting some remnants of that stuff, even though all the neighborhoods are kind of moving in there, unfortunately. But we've still got a few years left before we're looking at houses running down the Kissimmee chain.
Yeah, and
We'll
I
see.
remember we were we were done with our episode. We had got enough
Yeah.
fish, and Jack was with us, the main camera, and the camera boat was south, and they were way behind. So we stopped, and we had fished this spot already. And you're like, man, I know I know there's a good fish here. There's been a good fish here. There's been several good fish here. And we haven't caught one yet. And you're like, let's wait for him. And I was like, all right, we got enough fish, but I'm not going to say no to fishing. Jack's not even paying attention. Like he's got a camera out, but he doesn't care because he's like, we got enough content. And we're throwing out these lipped crankbaits. And I never throw a lipped crankbait. Like that's one bait I just don't ever throw. And you're working it back and you get whacked, man. You hook the fish that we were looking for, a bruiser. In fact, Jack wasn't even ready when you hooked
No,
this
he'd put
fish.
his stuff away. I think the other
Yeah,
boat had just got there like a minute or two before that, and they were just past where I was going to cast. And they
yeah.
just passed and just cast basically around the boat, back of the boat, over the spot that I wanted to hit. Yeah, it was
Next
crazy.
thing you know, you're
Yeah.
hollering. We see this fish. crash it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to get the net. I run and get the net. And you brought the fish to the boat. I go to scoop the fish. And as I'm lifting up, like the fish is still in the water.
And this
Okay.
is in like 10-mile-an-hour current too at that.
It's ripping.
That was part of the harbor. Yeah.
Your lure goes phew,
Dink.
past my face, and I'm
Yeah.
lifting up. And by the grace of God, that fish was in the net.
We had his head out of the water just enough. Yeah. You
It
scooped
was
him.
it was nuts, dude. Absolutely nuts. And hey, we ended up getting that big fish in the boat, and that was just the sweetest little ending, the cherry on
That was
top.
nice.
We had a
Yes.
killer day. We had to put a bunch of fish in the boat. But you got me on that one. You got the big one there. And I don't care. That's one thing. I don't care who catches the bigger fish. I don't care who catches the most fish on the show. What I care about is we're having fun and we're going fishing, putting fish in the boat. That's all that matters. That's why I go fishing. Not
Yeah.
I
Certainly.
like chasing trophies. I like catching big fish. But when you're out fishing with a friend, who cares who catches the big one? That just gives me more motivation next time to, talk a little trash, be like, you're not going to get it this time. You're not going to get the big one this
Right.
time.
Yeah.
And then go out there and fish hard and have fun. Like that's the whole point of going fishing.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
I've been out there a few more times. It's really beautiful. Last week we had Matt Burrows on the show, and he's a good friend of mine and a client, and he's a tournament angler out in Oklahoma. And he and I had a fun day out there. Whenever Matt gets in town, we try to go do stuff. It's something I really appreciate about him. He always tells me, "Hey, Jonathan, let's go somewhere we don't know. Let's go explore something completely different." And
Just something random. Yeah.
yeah, if we totally skunk, whatever, like let's just go have fun and do something different. I was like, you know what? I have not gone to Cyprus since Tony and I filmed
Since
it.
then. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's just go have fun. And we crushed it, man. We had a really fun day.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I love getting down there. So tell me, as we continue this, we are in, end of winter. We're in the end of February. Spring is quickly getting here. What is your go-to bait? I know we talked about bed and fish, but this time of year, what's your go-to for catching bass?
Oh gosh. For me, it's kind of situational. Like people ask me that, and I get asked that a lot in some of the seminars that I give. I mean, I've got a couple that I do, but a lot of times, and I'll start with this, is I tell people have your confidence baits tied on when you go to the lake. Ones that paddle tail speed worm, something like that, or something you're going to catch fish on, but then show up to the lake and let the conditions dictate what you're going to tie on. Because if you go and sit there for 2 hours and you rig up 12 rods, and you're going to feel obligated to throw all those baits before you tie them off or before you cut them off and change. So at least let the conditions dictate. And that's this time of year, conditions change from day to day. So that's why it's so hard to pick one other than a couple of my confidence that I know I'm going to catch them on dragging a worm. I'm going to have some type of paddle tail or some type of soft plastic Texas rig tied on, and maybe some type of lipless bait or a bladed bait as well. But this time of year with the conditions, especially, I would just say for right now, we had a cold front. Even though fish can be kind of lethargic, they can be reactive as well. And a chatterbait bladed jig can be a good mixture of those two. But also depending on the wind. So say if you're in, like now, we've got real windy conditions, cold front, chatterbait can be really good. A lipless chatterbait or a lipless rattle trap can be good. And then also dragging a bigger 10-inch worm. If you're out in open water, maybe moving water situations. If you're up at the bank, something like a 5 or 6-inch Cinco stick style bait or some type of crawl. Flipping to isolated pieces of cover. And then with smaller weights, maybe 3/16 to 3/8. And then on the opposite end of that, if you're at the bank, fishing as heavy of cover matted vegetation as you can find. And that's typically 1 ounce to 2 ounce, depending on the thickness of the cover. So depending on your fishing style and weather conditions, you've got some options to tell you where to go and what to do and what pattern to kind of run off of. Like today, it was post front bluebird skies. It's starting to warm trend. Those fish are gonna, if because a lot of those fish are closer to the bank, the ones that are pre-spawn still are about ready to spawn. They're gonna move into that heavy cover, and then the ones that are already post spawn, they're gonna pull out to thicker submerged grass, or pull off into channels and a little bit deeper holes, things like that, and pre-stage again before they move out into deeper water.
Gotcha. Hey, we're quickly coming
Yeah.
up to our next break. When we get back, we're going to talk more fishing with Captain Tony Summers right here on the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. Before we continue with Captain Tony Summers, guys, you know the drill. I want to connect with you on social media. So at the Captain's Log TV on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I love hearing from you. I love seeing what you guys are catching. I love getting messages from you. I've got so many people who've been reaching out and asking me questions about fishing, and I love that. I love educating people, and I love knowing what you guys are doing. So make sure that you are liking, subscribing, you're following, you're clicking that bell on YouTube at the Captain's Log TV. At the Captain's Log TV. I got Captain Tony Summers with me. We've been talking fishing before we got interrupted with that break. We're talking about his favorite lures. And Tony made a tremendous point, okay? A fantastic suggestion. Start with your confidence bait. But then when you get there and you are seeing what the actual conditions are, then start thinking through that. Let the conditions dictate what you're doing. Let the conditions dictate what you're going to throw. And then let the fish tell you if they want that or not. You know, when you see bass fishermen, you see lots of rods, lots of different setups on that deck. And they're going through trying to dial in exactly what these fish want. And once you figure out that key ingredient, boom. Once you figure out that pattern, that can make a huge difference for your success out on the water. You had mentioned, Tony, throw in a chatterbait. I tell you, that is a bait I don't use. I was filming a promo for a company last year, and the guy I was bass fishing with, we were bass fishing for this promo. He was throwing a chatterbait, and he gave me one. He said, "Throw this." We were on a private lake, and that he fishes exclusively. And I was like, bro, I don't have any confidence. Not my thing. And I caught a fish on it. But it's incredible the amount of vibration and noise that these chatterbaits, I mean, they're appropriately named. The amount of noise that these fish or these baits put out is no wonder why fish want to eat them. But it's not my first choice for catching bass. You had mentioned a lipless crankbait, a rattle trap. The Bill Lewis rattle trap. I've caught probably the majority of the bigger bass that I have caught have been on a rattle trap. Finding areas, 10 to 12 feet deep, half of that being grass, and throwing out that rattle trap and that vibration and that noise from those ball bearings inside of that lure, and running that across the grass, pulling those fish out of that grass to eat. That can be really. I've caught a lot of big fish doing that.
They're definitely keyed in on the bait this time of year.
Yeah.
So those are great, bait mimicking lures to throw.
Absolutely. Now, I think it's called an A rig or an umbrella rig. It's got
there's
like 5 or
it's
6
Alabama rig, but
Alabama
it's
rig.
Castable umbrella rig with 5 wires on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever?
That's a
fish
great
like
one. Oh yeah. Definitely.
I've never thrown one. Is there a particular one you prefer, a certain
Uh,
style, or like, I don't know anything about them, but I've been seeing people
Six
holding up.
Sense has one that I like to throw.
Okay.
My favorite, um, like as far as the wire goes, there's a blade, a little small blade. I don't know the number of it, but it's got a blade halfway on the wire. And I typically only throw one that has the blades on it. It's just more flash.
Huh.
And I'm throwing 3 to 4 inch, maybe even 5 inch paddle tails on it. And then depending on the depth that you can throw it out or where the fish are, you can change your jig head weight to adjust for that fall and
Mm.
for your retrieve depth on that lure. But
A
that's a great
buddy,
one to throw. If you got the setup and you can throw it all day long, that's a great one. That one catches fish.
what kind of setup do you like to throw that with? What kind of
I'm
rod,
throwing
reel?
it on a 7.5 to 8 foot heavy, and depending on the clarity of the water dictates my line a lot of
Mm.
times. So if I'm in clear water, I'm going to throw probably a 25 pound fluorocarbon, maybe 20. And if I'm in
Straight,
dirtier water,
straight fluorocarbon.
straight
Straight.
fluorocarbon. Yeah. And it's probably 20. I use a, well, it depends. I'm usually throwing about a 25 pound fluorocarbon, something heavy. It's got a little stretch to it. You get multiple fish on it. You want some give to it.
Mm.
If I'm around heavy cover and grass or the water is dirty, I'll throw like a 50 to 60 pound braid. Um, Same setup, but
Heavy stuff.
I just backed the drag off a little bit. The fish pull against that bait. There's a lot of give to it, so they can rip the hooks out a lot easier if
Mm.
you're throwing the bait. So if you're throwing braid on the Alabama rig, you want to back the drag off just a touch,
Because there's no
or
stretch in the
at least
hook.
I like to. Yeah, I mean, which in that same sense, I'll set the hook harder just to make sure. And there's not much of it like a rear back and set the hook. It's just a turn and real hard, but I'll put a little more force into it with the braid because the drag is looser.
You,
But I don't lose as many fish because if I'm fighting halfway back to the boat and it's a bigger fish and he goes to make a run, I've got a little give to it so the hooks don't
gotcha.
pull or
Do
don't
you
open up.
go straight braid or do you add any kind of leader to it?
Straight braid. Nah, typically straight braid. Yeah, I'm not going to
Hmm.
throw a leader on that because the leader knot's going to catch
Hmm.
a lot easier. And with that much weight, you're more susceptible to breaking an eye or the knot kind of getting weakened
Hmm. Hmm.
with
Okay.
that much weight.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah, I have a buddy that posted a picture the other day. He had a Alabama rig and had 5 fish on. I was like, well, that's cool.
I believe it. I've gotten closer. I've never caught five. I've caught four, but I've gotten closest to it on the Conway chain. That's one of my favorite places there in Butler chain to throw in that rig.
Well, it's the Conway's near and dear to my heart.
Oh yeah,
Grew up on that lake. So, in fact, you were a camera boat operator on
yeah.
season 1 on that lake for my dad. I did an
hmm
episode with my dad. And when they start schooling out there, that's why it got me thinking about it because they'll start schooling. We're catching two at a time on a jerk bait. So I'm thinking, man, those fish are going bananas. And you throw an Alabama rig through that, you'll probably catch 5, at one time, and that would be absolutely wild. Um, but
It's a lot of fun.
you make a good point about having a heavier rod, throwing like an 8 foot heavy, dude. I throw an 8 foot heavy at tarpon, but that's a big lure. So you need to have something with some backbone to be able to
Oh yeah,
throw
I mean you're
something
like three
heavy.
ounces worth of weight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that
yeah,
makes all the difference having that heavier rod. Plus, if you get 5 fish on there, they're
yeah,
all going one
exactly.
way or the
Yeah,
other. I mean, that
you need
can
some
get
backbone to
wild.
get it in. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's going to be
I'm
awesome.
sure TFO's got some nice setups that'll throw one of those
I've
for
got
those
plenty of
customers.
tarpon rods in my
Yeah.
shop, man. I'm gonna have to
Oh
do
yeah.
that. Are you what kind of size reel are you throwing with that?
A lot of times I'm throwing the bait caster
Okay.
on that. If I was gonna throw a spinning, it would probably be at least a 4,000.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just
4,045.
rigged up. I was just in Fort Lauderdale earlier this week. Um, we were filming and fishing for snakeheads and throwing frogs at them, and
Oh wow. I've heard
they're
that's
like
a blast.
oh my dude,
I've heard that's a
they're like
blast.
snook
Like mini
and
snook, right?
yeah, snook and redfish, the way they boil up behind a bait and chase it, it's just like that, but then it's a frog in vegetation. And same deal, we had 50-pound braid on a bait caster and 30-pound braid on a spinning reel. Because you're fishing in such heavy vegetation, they're up against the bank, just covered in grass.
Up in the trees, right?
Yeah, no joke. No
Yeah.
joke. They were some on the like literally on the bank. It was the wildest thing.
Throw it up on the
That's
bank and reel it off and
that's
pop
exactly
it.
that's exactly
Yeah.
what we had to do. And I'm sure I'll do a radio show with Captain Johnny who I was filming that with, but we were throwing those lures, those frogs, on the bank, like literally in the grass, in the trees, in the rocks, and bringing it down slowly because they're so tight to the shoreline that if you let it plunk into the water, they take off. But if you drag that thing real slow, bump, 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 into
That's
the water,
wild.
they smoke it. It was very wild. But we're
I can't wait
using
to see
that.
that episode.
Oh, dude,
That's
it's
gonna be
killer.
neat.
It's really cool. But we're using heavy line because of all that vegetation. Just on the outside of the grass is a bunch of lily pads. And so same
Oh,
deal, if they get into those lily pads, you having that braid, that thicker braid, allows you to rip them out and
wrench them out. Yeah.
slice through that vegetation. Now, I've never spooled a reel full of fluorocarbon. I use fluoro for leader, but when you go to the store and you see the fluoro, a bigger spool of it for your reels is a whole lot cheaper than if you buy it for your leader. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's the same material? Have you ever used the
It's the
mainline
same.
fluoro?
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
if you are,
I've got a sponsor that actually admitted that one time. That my
huh?
line sponsor, they admitted that. Yeah. It's the same consistency.
Well,
So
that would
it's,
save
I think
people a
you're paying
lot
for
of
the
money.
convenience and yeah. So you can literally just like you're saying, buy a 3, 4, 500 yard spool. And if you want the convenience of having that leader spool, just fill it
People,
back up every time.
yeah,
Cause I use
keep
those
the empty
quite a
spool.
bit. Yeah. Cause I'll keep those leader spools around my rod holders on the boat or just, in the boat somewhere and it's convenient. Just kind of
Yeah.
spin them off, cut it and got a leader real quick. I
All
need it.
right. Well, I'm gonna have to put this theory to the test because I saw it. I was at Walmart the other day picking up some stuff with the kid, and I was like, I'm gonna have to try that, man. I'm gonna have to test that out
Yeah.
because it's a much better value. We went to go. I haven't used mono in years, but we just filmed an episode down in the St. John's, and Captain Nick Clark was like, "Bro, we need 6 pound mono on our spinning reels," and I was like, "I ain't got no 6 pound mono."
On the river. Really?
Yeah, we were fishing for shad and bass
Ah,
and
okay.
specks. We
Okay.
we were panfish stuff. So
Gotcha.
having that
Gotcha.
light line was
Yeah.
crucial. But I was like, I don't have any. So I was going to buy some line. I saw that and I was like, dude, that's cool. That's very, very cool. Hey, we
Talking
got
about
30
leaders.
seconds.
Oh,
Go ahead.
well,
No, go
I was
ahead. We
going to
got
say,
30 seconds.
I'm going to talk about leaders. Actually go more mono or more copolymer because it's more abrasion resistant than the fluorocarbon. So I use
Huh.
it quite a bit for
So
leaders.
you
Yeah.
you prefer, well, you know what? Let's talk about that when we get back because I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on that. I've got Captain Tony Summers with me. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. This is Captain's Log Radio. We'll be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back. This is the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. Got Captain Tony Summers with me today. The dude is a fishing machine. And we got interrupted there. We were talking about leaders going into leaders. I am a fluorocarbon leader kind of guy. I've got this is what I use probably the most. This is 20-pound leaders. This is Florida Fishing Products Infinity Leader. But we're talking about getting these larger spools of leader or mainline fluoro and using that as leader. But Tony, you're saying you like using mono, and I think I have an idea why, but let's talk a little bit more about that.
Well, a lot of times you're trying that leader onto braid, right?
Correct.
So it's that shock and give, that you want that functionality of the leader to perform. So that mono is good about that, but it's also good about being abrasion resistant. It can rub up against a whole bunch of stuff, rough rocks, docks, trees, any type of cover, and kind of hold up to that before it end up breaking.
Yeah,
And the same way,
mono.
I use a lot of copolymer too, in the same sense, for the same thing.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, mono
yeah,
has a lot of stretch. I think about my dad, I think about the previous generation of anglers. They didn't use braid. Look at the style of fishing that we saw growing up as kids. It was primarily throwing mono.
yeah.
Mono still has a great place in fishing. If I wanted, like we were talking about on Fishing St. John's, fishing these super clear, clean water for these panfish, we're using really light mono. If I want a sheep's head fish, I will use mono because the sheep's head are really smart, and again, you get the abrasion resistance there. Um, but yeah, I'd something to really consider thinking about spooling some reels with straight fluoro, or if switching over to using mono as a leader line. When you do
And they
that,
both
tie
have
it
their
to your
place too. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When you're tying it to your main line, your braid line, are you still using like a uni connection, or are you doing like an FG knot? What's your preference there?
I do FG mostly. If the leader size is bigger, then I go to the uni to uni.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
for me, it just holds better. If I'm doing a 50-pound braid to a 40-pound, 50-pound leader, if I'm offshore or something, then I do uni
Got it. Got it.
or a swivel or
Yeah.
something in between. But I'll share just before I forget.
Do
So,
it.
speaking of old timey stuff, I had an old guy share a trick with me, and this kind of goes into play of the situation and how you want to fish it. And this came into play for fishing live bait, but also fishing stuff weightless. And
Mm.
I don't know if you've ever seen it or heard of it. So we use he used a mono leader, 10 to 15 pound, but it kind of depend on the structure and cover you're around. And then we coat it with fly line wax or some type of
Huh.
wax, and it
Huh.
makes it float, right? So if you're throwing any type of live bait, but you want the fall rate to slow way down and have some buoyancy to it and stay above the cover, add some
Broke that
wax to
line.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to have the same buoyancy rate or get closer to the braid, and it's going to float that bait a little bit better. For
Oh,
one, yeah. So same if you
that's
want to throw like a
genius.
weightless, yeah, yeah. That one I haven't shared that one a lot, but that's one I kind of hold in my back pocket for stuff.
Huh.
As you
Where
just
do you are you
they
getting
sell
this?
it in a fly shop like the one there in Orlando. It's just a
Okay.
little tube of it, and you just you put the line over top of the container and kind of
And
hold
slide
it
it
and
through.
pull the line through it. Yeah, or you can put
Oh,
some on your
it's
finger
just
and
yeah, it's just to slick in your fly lines to help it slide through your hands and slide through the guides
yeah,
better.
but it's a wax, and the wax is
Mm,
buoyant.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm gonna try that out. I
yeah,
gotta try that.
It's pretty nice.
You know what? I got some right here too, man.
Too funny.
I'm
Too
not
funny.
even kidding.
So
Oh,
that's a cool thing to add to your leader, even especially fluorocarbon, just with
the line
how
dressing.
much it sinks. Yeah,
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 I'm gonna take that with me tomorrow. I'm gonna try that
yeah.
out. That's a great one. Hey, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about MarineTech Systems. Now, one thing about Tony is he's really good and he's really technical when it comes to rigging boats. This is something I, okay, I'm gonna be honest. I like it. I don't love it. Okay, because I am not flexible, and to work on some of these boats, man, you gotta contort yourself into these hatches and holes, and you're you do one of these things trying to get your arm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not my thing. But Tony, you're the man. If I want something done, I'm calling you, buddy. How did all that happen? How did you learn how to do all this rigging?
Well, I actually grew up in the automotive field. Being at the shop my family had, we specialized in automotive diagnostics, and we rebuilt starters and alternators and worked on computers and cars. My dad was a electrical engineer, and so I just grew up in that electrical side of the 12-volt systems, which is like what's on a car. And I've been in Florida, I had a love for fishing, grew up in it, and when I left the automotive field, I started guiding back in 2012, and did that stuff on the side. And progressively every year did more and more jobs on the side. And through what happened with the pandemic and tourism changing, and that's what kept me alive for a couple of years, was doing those jobs on the side. And something just nudged me. I don't know if it, God kind of put it on my heart to open it up, and also the phone blowing up for more jobs, and kind of transitioned into it, and got lucky that I made that move at the right time, because the guiding stuff, that's, at least for us in Central Florida on the freshwater side, slowed down significantly. Guys leaving the guiding side, going back to jobs, or guys just struggling. So now I guide, very little, pass off the trips quite a bit, still do some from time to time, but I'm in the shop Monday through Friday now, and kind of growing my knowledge and the things that I do and the jobs that I'm doing every week. So it's great kind of I've got a good team with me now, and kind of trying to grow that team, grow the shop, grow the amount of stuff that we're doing. And still trying to garden. I'm in winter garden at the moment. Yeah. Hopefully moving and building a shop here in the next year or so. Awesome. God willing, that I'll have a big building to work out of, and even expand even more.
So tell me, what all do you install? Is it just speakers? Is it Garmin's? Is it LiveScope?
Everything. I've got a 24-foot Blue Wave I got in this morning. We're doing a complete JL system in it. So I can do complete audio systems, any of your forward-facing sonar setups that guys are really adding on now. Multiple units at the console, multiple units at the bow. I make my own wiring harnesses for these systems of power. We generate dedicated electronic systems where they have their own battery, their own power source, awesome, their own circuit protection systems. And you can, same way you can tie it into the existing system that's on the boat, or separate it, installing trolling motors, doing trailer work. I've got jack stands at the shop doing, to do trailer work and bunks. And I've got a hoist at the shop now, doing jack plates and swapping out engines, doing services on motors now as well. So it's kind of come full circle. If I had the equipment, I could even do marine mat, like SeaDeck as well. I could do the decking. Kind of a partial dealer for them as well. I don't do any carpet. Probably the one thing that I don't ever really want to get into is doing carpet. But yeah, it's wild. I started I officially opened the shop in July 23. So not quite, almost just a little over a year and a half. It's grown quite a bit.
Heck yeah.
It's been great. And I got guys coming awesome from each coast. Bring their boats over. Yeah.
It's easy.
Been a blessing. That's for sure.
I just got done installing a trolling motor on my bay boat. Got a 36-volt Lithium Pros battery delivered to me, and my dad and I have been having fun drilling. My dad has way too much fun drilling holes into my boat, and I'm just like, bro,
I feel his pain. I tell people that I enjoy watching people stand there while I drill holes in their boat and make them make them squirm.
Better chill out with that drill right there, brother. And in fact, we were drilling a hole in this hatch, and going from through the hatch into an anchor
brand new boat.
Oh no, this is my bay boat. This is my older boat.
Oh, this is your other boat. Oh, okay.
This is my Pro Line, my 22-foot Pro Line, and we did so good not to drop this Forstner bit, this like 2-inch bit, circle bit, into the boat. And we got all the way done. My dad's like, all right, let me finish up and go to this side. And there it goes. The bit fell off the drill. Kaplunk, 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 down in the deep V of this bottom of this boat. Oh, man. So I got on Amazon. I ordered me a 220-pound pulling power magnet on a string.
Oh, no. Ah,
Took me like 4 or 5 tries, and I finally got it. So I got that bit out of there.
oh, the joys of rigging boats.
I'm like, this
Yeah.
is why you hire a professional, Tony Summers over at MarineTech Systems, so you don't have to worry about drilling a hole in your boat and dropping a bit down at the bottom of it.
You just let me deal with the loss of broken and lost tools out on a boat. Yeah.
Oh, what a mess. But we got it done, man. And he's been having an absolute blast. I got home today from my charter, and my dad texted me. He's like, "Yo, you home yet, man? Like, I want to work on the boat." And I'm like, "Yeah, you gotta wait for me." He's like, "I'm waiting for you. Come on, let me know when you're home." I'm like, "I'm home." He's like, "I'll be right there." So he showed up, and he's showing me what he had worked on today, and everything's finished out. It looks good. And we put the trolling motor on it and tested it out. And when that thing went doo-doo-doo and turned on, he got this big grin on his face. I was like, "We did
Nice.
it, buddy. We got
That's
her." And
right.
this isn't complicated stuff, but we had a lot of fun with this project. It gets way more complicated. If I'm working on, one of my skiffs and working in the hatches, it can be really, really tight. But that's why you call Tony. Hey, we're in our last minute, Tony. How can we connect with you? If people wanted to go fishing with you, or if they wanted to have you do some service on their boat, how do they connect with you?
You can actually reach out to me directly. I've got my cell phone number on there. I'm just available. 321-363-6550. Got a website, MarineTechSystems.com, on social media, Instagram and Facebook, MarineTech Systems. Message me there, look at videos, check out reels, see current jobs that we're doing. Just shoot me a text, give me a call, and we can make your next job or dream possible.
Absolutely. No, I love it, man. Proud of you. You're crushing it, dude.
Appreciate
Anything
it. Same to
you
you.
go and touch,
Same to
man,
you.
you start crushing, turns to gold. I appreciate it. Appreciate your friendship. Hey, this is Captain Jonathan Moss. This is the Captain's Log Radio. I had Captain Tony Summers with me today. Make sure you guys are on the social media at the Captain's Log TV. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.